The boy had come a long way since that first day at the mansion, when the millionaire's wife had mocked him. The memory of her words, once sharp and cruel, now seemed distant. They had ignited a spark within him, a determination to prove not to her but to himself what he was capable of achieving. Over the years, he had grown into a confident and skilled musician, someone whose talent was recognized by people in his neighborhood, his town, and even beyond. Each step of the journey had been filled with challenges, lessons, and moments of reflection, shaping him not only as a musician but as a person. One morning, he received an invitation to perform at a prestigious music hall in the city. It was a place he had only seen from afar, a hall known for hosting the finest musicians and performers. His heart raced as he imagined stepping onto the stage, surrounded by the grandeur and expectations of such an esteemed venue. His mother, as always, offered her calm encouragement. She reminded him that talent, practice, and heart had brought him this far, and that he should focus on sharing his music with sincerity rather than seeking approval or recognition. As he prepared for the performance, the boy reflected on his journey. He thought about the small apartment where he had practiced tirelessly, the old keyboard that had first taught him the joy of creating melodies, and the countless hours of dedication that had shaped his skills. He remembered the first time he played at the mansion, the silence that followed the first note and the astonished faces of the guests. That moment had been a turning point, showing him that perseverance and courage could overcome doubt and ridicule. Each memory fueled his determination and reminded him of how far he had come. The day of the performance arrived, and the boy stepped into the music hall with a mix of excitement and nerves. The stage was grand, the audience vast, and the atmosphere charged with anticipation. He took his place at the piano, adjusted the bench, and ran his fingers lightly across the keys, feeling the familiar texture and imagining the sound that would fill the hall. He took a deep breath, letting go of fear and focusing on the music that flowed from within him. The opening notes were soft and deliberate, gradually building into a melody that captured the attention of every listener. The audience fell silent, drawn into the story that the boy's music told. Each note conveyed emotion, reflecting his journey, struggles, and growth. The music was not just a performance. It was a conversation, a way of communicating the depth of his experiences without words. People listened intently, feeling the emotions he expressed, and some were moved to tears. In that moment, the boy realized the profound power of music to connect people, transcend differences, and touch hearts. Midway through the performance, he introduced a complex section, demonstrating not only technical skill but emotional depth. The audience was captivated, leaning forward and closing their eyes to absorb every note. The boy felt a surge of confidence and joy, knowing that he was sharing something truly meaningful. He remembered the lessons from his mother, the encouragement from mentors, and the countless hours of practice that had prepared him for this moment. The music flowed effortlessly, blending technique, creativity, and emotion into a performance that was both powerful and intimate. When the final note lingered in the air, the hall was silent for a heartbeat before erupting into applause. The boy took a modest bow, feeling a sense of fulfillment that went beyond recognition or praise. He had achieved something greater. He had connected with the audience, shared his story, and inspired admiration and emotion through his music. The applause was a reflection of the journey he had taken, the dedication he had shown, and the impact of his talent on others. After the performance, many audience members approached him, offering congratulations, praise, and gratitude. Some shared how deeply the music had moved them, how it had reminded them of their own experiences, and how it had inspired them. The boy listened humbly, understanding that his role as a musician was to communicate, inspire, and touch lives. These interactions reinforced his belief in the power of music and motivated him to continue honing his skills and sharing his talent with the world. In the weeks that followed, the boy continued to receive invitations to perform at various events, both large and small. Each performance was an opportunity to grow, to experiment with new compositions, and to connect with different audiences. He explored diverse musical styles, composed original pieces, and refined his technique under the guidance of mentors who recognized his potential. With each step, he became not only a skilled musician but also a thoughtful and empathetic performer, aware of the responsibility his talent carried. Despite his growing recognition, the boy remained grounded. He continued to live simply, support his mother, and dedicate himself to consistent practice and learning. He understood that humility and discipline were essential to sustaining growth and maintaining the integrity of his art. Fame and accolades were temporary, but the love for music, the commitment to excellence, and the impact on others were lasting. He focused on these enduring values, letting them guide his decisions and actions. The boy's journey also deepened his understanding of resilience. He faced challenges, mistakes during performances and moments of doubt, but he learned to embrace them as opportunities for growth. Each challenge strengthened his skills, expanded his perspective, and reinforced his determination. He understood that success was not a straight path, but a journey filled with obstacles that required courage, patience, and perseverance to overcome. This awareness allowed him to navigate his rising career with grace and confidence. Over time, the boy's story became well known, inspiring others who faced their own challenges. Parents brought their children to see him perform, hoping to instill a love of music and the belief that dedication and talent could lead to meaningful achievements. Young musicians sought his guidance and mentorship, eager to learn from someone who had walked a path of perseverance, growth, and humility. The boy embraced these opportunities to inspire and teach, understanding that his experiences could empower others to pursue their dreams. The millionaire's wife, who had once mocked him, continued to follow his progress from a distance. She had long since recognized his extraordinary talent and the dedication that had propelled him forward. Though she never openly admitted her initial mistake, her actions reflected acknowledgement and respect. Occasionally, she invited him to perform at gatherings, not out of curiosity but to witness the remarkable growth and artistry of the young musician she had once underestimated. Through all of this, the boy never lost sight of his beginnings. He remembered the small apartment, the worn keyboard, and the countless hours spent practicing with his mother's quiet encouragement. These memories grounded him, reminding him that every achievement was built on dedication, hard work, and support from those who believed in him. He carried gratitude for his journey, understanding that humility, perseverance, and heart were the foundation of true success. As the boy reflected on his journey, he realized that music had transformed his life in ways he had never imagined. It had given him confidence, purpose, and a means to communicate emotions that words could not convey. It had opened doors to opportunities, allowed him to inspire others, and created connections across diverse audiences. Most importantly, it had taught him the values of resilience, humility, and dedication, which would guide him throughout his life. Looking ahead, the boy felt a sense of excitement and determination. He understood that there were still many challenges to face, new stages to play on, and lessons to learn. Yet he also knew that with passion, perseverance, and heart, he could continue to grow and make a meaningful impact through his music. Every performance, every composition, and every interaction was a step on a journey that promised fulfillment, inspiration, and the joy of sharing his gift with the world. In the end, the boy had transformed from a quiet, overlooked child into a confident, skilled musician whose talent and dedication inspired admiration and respect. He had proven that beginnings did not define destiny, that perseverance and passion could overcome doubt and adversity, and that music could serve as a bridge to touch hearts and connect people. His journey was a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of humility, and the enduring impact of following one's passion with unwavering dedication. As the boy grew more experienced and confident, his music began to draw attention from beyond his neighborhood. Invitations came from small halls, local schools, and community centers. He was now playing for audiences who had never heard him before, and each performance was an opportunity to share his story through the language of music. He approached each new audience with humility, understanding that every performance was a chance to connect, inspire, and grow. Despite the excitement, he never let success change his character. He continued to wake up early, help his mother with chores, and practice diligently for hours each day. He understood that talent alone could not sustain him. It was discipline, passion, and commitment that allowed him to improve continuously. Every note he played was a reflection of his effort, his experiences, and the challenges he had overcome. One afternoon, he was invited to perform at a cultural event in a neighboring town. The venue was larger than he had ever played in, with hundreds of people filling the seats. As he walked onto the stage, he felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but he also felt a deep sense of purpose. He knew that his music could touch hearts, and that thought steadied him. He positioned himself at the piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. The music started softly, a gentle melody that gradually built in strength and emotion. The audience was captivated, leaning forward and closing their eyes, fully immersed in the experience. Children watched with wide eyes. Parents smiled softly, and some adults wiped tears from their cheeks. The boy felt a sense of connection he had never experienced before, realizing that music could communicate feelings in a way words never could. It was a shared experience, a bridge between his world and theirs. Midway through the performance, he shifted to a more complex piece. The melody was intricate, challenging both technically and emotionally, but the boy played with confidence and precision. Each note flowed seamlessly into the next, carrying his story and the emotions of his journey. The audience remained silent, completely absorbed in the performance. He could feel their energy, their admiration, and it fueled him to play even more passionately. When the final note lingered in the air, the room erupted in applause. The boy took a modest bow, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and pride. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that his music had touched people in ways he could not fully express. The applause was not just for skill, but for the story behind it, for the journey of a young boy who had risen from humble beginnings to share his gift with the world. After the performance, several people approached him, complimenting his talent and expressing how moved they were by the music. One local music teacher offered to give him free lessons to help him refine his technique and learn new compositions. Another audience member invited him to perform at a charity event, recognizing the inspiration he could bring to children who had never seen a young musician achieve so much. These opportunities opened new doors, expanding his world beyond the neighborhood he had always known. Through these experiences, the boy learned the importance of perseverance and humility. He realized that recognition was not the ultimate goal. It was the impact his music had on others that mattered most. Each performance was a chance to inspire, to comfort, and to connect, and he embraced this responsibility with grace and dedication. He understood that his journey was about more than personal success. It was about sharing his passion and using his talent to make a difference. The millionaire's wife continued to observe his progress. Her initial mockery had given way to admiration and respect. She occasionally invited him to perform at gatherings within the mansion, and each time she watched closely, no longer as a skeptic but as someone acknowledging the boy's extraordinary talent. Though she never openly admitted her previous mistake, her actions reflected a shift in perspective, and the boy accepted this silently, focusing on the music rather than seeking validation from anyone. At home, the boy's mother remained his anchor. She reminded him to stay grounded, to never let praise or attention overshadow his dedication and character. She emphasized the importance of balance, ensuring that he continued to manage his responsibilities, practice consistently, and nurture his relationships. Her guidance provided stability in the midst of increasing opportunities and growing recognition, allowing him to pursue his dreams without losing sight of his values. As the boy's reputation grew, he began to understand the power of influence. Children admired him. Parents sought his guidance for their own kids, and community members looked to him as a symbol of talent nurtured through perseverance. He realized that he could inspire others not only through his music but through his actions, showing that hard work, dedication, and humility could lead to meaningful achievements. This awareness motivated him to continue improving, not for fame or wealth, but to honor the gift of music and the support of those who had guided him. During one memorable performance at a local festival, the boy noticed a group of children sitting quietly in the front row. Their expressions were filled with awe and curiosity, and he felt a deep sense of responsibility to make the performance meaningful for them. He played with extra care, ensuring that every note was expressive, vibrant, and engaging. By the end of the performance, the children clapped enthusiastically, some dancing in their seats, and the boy felt a profound connection with the audience. He understood that music had the power to create joy, inspire dreams, and touch hearts, and this experience reinforced his commitment to continue sharing his talent. Over time, the boy expanded his skills, learning to compose original pieces and experimenting with different styles of music. He explored classical compositions, modern melodies, and improvisational techniques, constantly challenging himself to grow. Each new composition reflected his experiences, emotions, and aspirations, allowing him to express himself fully through music. The process of learning and creating became as important as performing, as it deepened his understanding of music and strengthened his ability to communicate through sound. The boy's journey was not without challenges. There were moments of doubt, mistakes during performances, and times when he felt overwhelmed by expectations. However, he learned to embrace these moments as opportunities for growth. He discovered that perseverance, patience, and self-reflection were essential to overcoming obstacles and improving continuously. Every challenge strengthened his character, refined his skill, and reinforced his commitment to his passion. Throughout this period, he remained connected to his roots. He never forgot the small apartment, the worn keyboard, and the countless hours of practice that had shaped his journey. He continued to help his mother, stay disciplined, and value the simple joys in life. This grounded approach allowed him to navigate success with humility and grace, ensuring that recognition and opportunity did not distract him from what truly mattered: the love of music and the joy of sharing it with others. By the end of this stage in his journey, the boy had transformed significantly. He had grown in skill, confidence, and understanding, evolving from a quiet observer into a young musician capable of captivating audiences and inspiring admiration. Yet he remained humble, disciplined, and committed to continuous growth. He had discovered that true success was measured not by applause or recognition, but by the impact of his music, the connections he created, and the inspiration he provided to others. The boy looked forward to the future with excitement and determination. He knew that many opportunities and challenges awaited him, but he now carried a sense of purpose and clarity that guided his actions. Each note he played, each performance he gave, and each lesson he learned was part of a larger journey, a journey of self-discovery, expression, and contribution. He understood that music was more than a skill. It was a gift to be shared, a tool for connection, and a way to leave a lasting impression on the world. With this understanding, he continued to practice, perform, and inspire, confident that his dedication, passion, and heart would lead him to new heights and meaningful experiences. The applause from the audience still echoed in the young boy's ears as he left the mansion that evening. He walked beside his mother, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The grandeur of the mansion, the weight of the performance, and the reactions of the guests created a whirlwind of emotions inside him. Yet beneath the surface, he felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. For the first time, he realized that his music could move people, could make them pause, listen, and feel something beyond words. Back home, the small apartment felt different that night. The familiar walls, the simple furniture, and the modest kitchen seemed warmer somehow, infused with the sense of possibility that the boy carried with him. He sat down at his worn keyboard and began to play, letting the melody flow freely, exploring variations of the piece he had performed. Each note was a reminder of the evening, the eyes of the audience, and the emotions he had witnessed reflected back at him. It was more than practice now. It was an exploration of what his music could truly become. Over the following days, invitations began to arrive for small gatherings, local performances, and opportunities to play in front of different audiences. Each invitation was both exciting and daunting. The boy understood that performing in front of people meant more than just playing notes. It meant connecting, sharing, and being vulnerable. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also the thrill of possibility. His mother supported him, encouraging him to focus on his love for music rather than fear or expectation. In one of the early performances after the mansion, the boy was asked to play at a charity event. The venue was smaller, less grand, but no less important. The audience consisted of families, children, and a few local dignitaries. He set up his small keyboard, feeling the familiar hum of anticipation. When he began to play, the room went silent, every ear tuned to the melody. The boy noticed the way people leaned forward, the smiles on children's faces, and the tears that formed in the eyes of adults. He realized that no matter the size of the venue, the power of music remained the same. It could inspire, comfort, and captivate. With each performance, the boy's confidence grew. He experimented with new pieces, learned to improvise, and began to understand the subtle art of reading his audience. He discovered that music was not just about technical skill. It was about emotion, storytelling, and connection. The applause, the smiles, and the admiration were gratifying, but what truly mattered was the feeling of touching hearts through his music. He began to see himself not just as a performer, but as a messenger, someone who could communicate in a language that everyone understood. The millionaire's wife, who had once mocked him, continued to observe his growth from a distance. She invited him occasionally to perform at smaller gatherings within the mansion, not out of ridicule, but perhaps curiosity and acknowledgement of his talent. Each time he played, she watched with a mixture of surprise and respect. She had underestimated the boy, and now she had to admit that his dedication and skill were undeniable. Her attitude softened, and although she did not openly apologize for her previous words, her actions reflected recognition and support. The boy's mother noticed the changes in her son. He walked taller, spoke with more confidence, and carried a quiet sense of assurance that had been absent before. She continued to guide him, reminding him of the importance of humility, persistence, and gratitude. She also cautioned him about the challenges that might come with attention and success. Not everyone would be kind or understanding, and he needed to remain grounded. The boy listened, absorbing her wisdom, and used it to navigate the growing opportunities and responsibilities in his life. One afternoon, as the boy practiced a new composition, he was approached by a local music teacher who had heard about his talent. The teacher offered guidance, advice, and encouragement, helping the boy refine his technique and expand his repertoire. This mentorship opened new doors, allowing him to understand music in a deeper, more nuanced way. The boy absorbed every lesson eagerly, his passion for music growing stronger with each day. He realized that learning was a continuous journey, and every performance, every practice session, and every piece of feedback was a step forward. As the boy's reputation grew, he began to understand the responsibility that came with his talent. People were looking to him not just for entertainment but for inspiration. Parents brought their children to watch him play, hoping to instill a love of music. Audience members approached him after performances, expressing gratitude for the emotions his music had stirred. The boy felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. He was no longer playing for recognition or validation. He was playing to share something meaningful, to touch lives and to bring joy and comfort to those who listened. Despite the increasing attention, the boy remained grounded. He continued to live simply, helping his mother at home, practicing diligently, and cherishing the moments of quiet reflection. He understood that fame and recognition were temporary, but skill, dedication, and passion were lasting. He also remembered the lesson from the millionaire's wife's initial challenge, that adversity and doubt could be catalysts for growth. Her mocking words, once hurtful, had sparked a determination that shaped his journey and strengthened his resolve. In one particularly memorable performance at a community event, the boy played for an audience that included children from underprivileged backgrounds, some of whom had never experienced live music before. As he played, he watched their faces light up with wonder and excitement. He realized that his music could provide hope, joy, and inspiration, especially to those who had few opportunities. The experience reinforced his belief that talent was not just for personal achievement, but could serve a greater purpose. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that he could make a positive difference in the lives of others through his art. The boy continued to push himself, exploring different styles of music and experimenting with compositions that reflected his emotions and experiences. He learned to blend technical skill with creativity, to express both joy and sorrow, hope and longing, through his performances. Each new piece was a journey, a challenge, and an opportunity to connect with audiences on a profound level. He discovered that music was not just about sound. It was about communication, empathy, and understanding, bridging gaps between people of different backgrounds and experiences. Throughout this period, his mother remained his anchor, providing support, guidance, and encouragement. She reminded him that success should never compromise integrity, that humility and kindness were as important as talent and achievement. She encouraged him to use his gift responsibly, to inspire and uplift rather than to boast or seek validation. The boy took these lessons to heart, understanding that true greatness lay not only in skill but in character and the impact he could have on others. As months passed, the boy's performances became more refined, his confidence unwavering, and his understanding of music deeper than ever. He had transformed from a quiet, overlooked child into a young musician capable of captivating audiences, inspiring admiration, and touching hearts. Yet he remained grounded, never forgetting the small apartment where he had begun, the worn keyboard that had nurtured his early practice, and the mother whose unwavering support had guided him every step of the way. The journey was far from over. There were still challenges, opportunities, and lessons ahead. But the boy had discovered a truth that would guide him throughout his life. That talent combined with dedication, courage, and heart could create extraordinary experiences, transcend social barriers, and bring joy and inspiration to others. Each note he played was a testament to his perseverance, a tribute to his beginnings, and a promise to continue growing, learning, and sharing the gift of music with the world. The day of the performance arrived with a mix of anticipation and nerves. The young boy, dressed in clean but simple clothes, walked alongside his mother toward the mansion. The streets were bustling with people, but his mind was focused entirely on the piano, waiting for him and the audience that expected him to play. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of the distance, but because of the weight of expectation pressing down on his small shoulders. He remembered the first time he had played at the mansion, the way the room had gone silent at the first note, and the looks of surprise and admiration on the faces of the guests. That memory both encouraged and intimidated him. As they reached the mansion, the doorman greeted them politely, and his mother gave a reassuring smile. The grandeur of the house never failed to amaze him. The polished floors reflected the chandelier's light, the walls adorned with paintings and ornaments that seemed priceless, and the grand piano gleamed in the center of the room. He took a deep breath and reminded himself that the wealth surrounding him did not define his worth or talent. The music he carried in his fingers, the dedication he had cultivated over countless hours, was what truly mattered. Inside the main room, several guests were already gathered, chatting and sipping their drinks. Some recognized him immediately and gave polite nods or smiles, while others whispered curiously about the young boy who had captured attention before. The millionaire's wife stood near the piano, her posture elegant, her eyes sharp as they scanned the room and then rested on him. She greeted him with a nod, her smirk less prominent but her curiosity evident. The boy returned the nod with a calm expression, determined to focus on the music rather than the opinions of the audience. He approached the piano, adjusting the bench to a comfortable height. The keys gleamed under the chandelier light, and he ran his fingers lightly across them, feeling their smooth texture and imagining the sound they would produce. He took a moment to center himself, closing his eyes briefly and recalling all the hours of practice, the quiet nights spent with his mother encouraging him, the small keyboard at home that had started it all. He felt a surge of calm confidence, knowing that he had prepared for this moment and that his dedication had brought him here. With a deep breath, he began to play. The opening notes were soft and deliberate, drawing the room into the melody as if it were a story unfolding before them. Each note carried emotion, telling of the boy's journey from a humble home to this grand mansion, from quiet observation to confident expression. The audience, initially polite, soon leaned forward, captivated by the purity and strength of the music. The boy's fingers moved with precision, each chord and sequence carefully placed to evoke feeling and connection. This was not just skill. It was storytelling through sound, a conversation with anyone willing to listen. As he continued, he noticed the reactions of the guests. Some eyes were wide with amazement, others glistened with tears, and many faces reflected awe and admiration. Even the millionaire's wife, who had attempted to provoke him through mockery months earlier, seemed genuinely moved by the performance. She stood silently, no smirk, no ridicule, only the quiet acknowledgement that the boy before her possessed a remarkable gift. It was in that moment that he understood the power of music, not only to entertain but also to break down barriers and create shared human experience. Midway through the piece, the boy introduced a section that was more complex, demanding both skill and emotion. He felt the tension in the room shift as the guests held their collective breath, sensing that something extraordinary was happening. His fingers danced across the keys, moving with confidence and passion. Each note was a declaration, a statement that despite humble beginnings, talent, dedication, and heart could shine through any circumstance. The room, once filled with murmurs and casual conversation, was now completely silent except for the music that flowed through it, resonating with the emotions of everyone present. The boy's mother watched from a corner, holding her breath and gripping her hands together. She felt a mixture of pride, awe, and worry. Pride in seeing her son perform with such poise and confidence, awe at the beauty and depth of the music, and worry for the weight of attention and expectation he was carrying at such a young age. She knew that the world could be harsh, that talent alone was not enough to shield him from criticism or disappointment. Yet in this moment she allowed herself to feel joy and hope, seeing her son as more than a quiet observer of life, but as someone capable of creating impact and connection. As the piece reached its climax, the boy's emotions poured fully into the music. His past struggles, his dreams, his dedication, and the support of his mother all became part of the melody. Each note was infused with authenticity, resonating not only in the room but within the hearts of those listening. The guests, many of whom had never experienced such raw emotion conveyed through music, were captivated and moved. Some exchanged glances of disbelief, realizing that this boy had transformed the performance into an unforgettable experience, one that went beyond talent and touched something deeper and more human. When the final note faded, there was a brief pause. The room held its breath as if the music had created a temporary stillness in time. Then, one by one, the guests began to clap, the sound growing into a full enthusiastic applause. The boy took a modest bow, his expression calm but proud. The applause was not the goal. It was a reflection of the connection he had created through his music. The millionaire's wife approached him, her face showing a mixture of respect and humility. She offered a quiet compliment, acknowledging the boy's skill and the courage it took to perform under such pressure. After the performance, the boy spent time interacting with some of the guests who were genuinely interested in his music. They asked questions about his inspirations, his practice, and his journey. Each conversation reinforced the realization that talent, when combined with dedication and heart, could create opportunities that once seemed impossible. The boy felt encouraged, but he also remained grounded, understanding that this was just one step on a much longer journey. In the days that followed, the boy reflected on the experience. He realized that the true power of music was not in impressing others or receiving applause, but in the ability to communicate emotion, tell stories, and connect people. He continued to practice diligently, refining his skills and exploring new compositions, motivated not by recognition, but by a love for the art and the joy it brought to himself and others. His mother continued to support him, her pride and guidance providing a steady foundation as he navigated the challenges and opportunities ahead. This performance marked a turning point in the boy's life. It was a moment where his talent, dedication, and courage intersected to create something extraordinary. The experience taught him important lessons about resilience, humility, and the importance of pursuing one's passion despite obstacles. It also showed him that opportunities could arise unexpectedly, and when they did, it was essential to be prepared and confident. The boy understood that this was just the beginning, that many challenges and achievements lay ahead, but he now carried a newfound belief in his ability to shape his own future through skill, perseverance, and heart. Even as he returned to his modest home, the boy felt transformed. The memory of the grand piano, the captivated audience, and the appreciation for his music lingered in his mind. It became a source of inspiration, a reminder that no matter where he came from, he had the potential to reach beyond limitations and touch lives through his talent. Each day as he sat at his small keyboard, he played not just for himself but for the countless possibilities that awaited him, knowing that with dedication, courage, and love for what he did, he could continue to grow and achieve more than he had ever imagined. The day after the gathering in the mansion, the boy returned to his small home with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The memory of the grand piano, the sparkling chandeliers, and the faces of the guests still lingered in his mind. He thought about the sound of the keys under his fingers, how the notes had filled the grand room, and how people had stopped to listen. For the first time, he felt that his music had the power to reach beyond the walls of his tiny apartment, to touch people he had never met before. At home, the atmosphere was quieter but just as full of emotion. His mother was preparing a simple breakfast, the aroma of bread and tea filling the small kitchen. She glanced up at him and noticed the sparkle in his eyes, the subtle confidence that had begun to shine after the performance. She smiled softly, her heart swelling with pride, though she could also sense the burden of expectation that had settled on his young shoulders. She knew that talent alone was not enough. The world could be harsh and unforgiving, especially to someone from their humble background. The boy sat down at the small keyboard in their living room, a keyboard that had seen better days but was still capable of producing the melodies he loved. He placed his fingers on the keys and began to play the same piece he had performed at the mansion. As the notes filled the room, he imagined the grand piano again, its smooth ivory keys and powerful sound. He thought about the faces of the guests, the surprised expressions, and even the millionaire's wife, whose mocking tone had sparked the courage to play. In that moment, he realized that the challenge he had faced was more than just a test of skill. It was a lesson in courage and self-belief. The boy's music was not just about playing notes. It was about telling a story. Each melody carried his emotions, his dreams, and his struggles. As he played, he remembered the long nights he had spent practicing alone, the times he had doubted himself, and the moments when he had felt invisible in a world that seemed to overlook people like him. Music had always been his refuge, a place where he could express himself freely without fear of judgment. Now he understood that it could also be a bridge to connect with others, to make them see the person behind the quiet exterior. While he played, his mother watched him with a mixture of awe and concern. She had always encouraged him to pursue his passion, but she also knew that the road ahead would be filled with obstacles. The world outside their small home was very different from the mansion, filled with people who might not appreciate talent or effort. Yet, she believed in him, in the resilience and dedication that had brought him this far. She silently promised herself that she would do everything she could to support him, no matter how difficult the journey might become. Days passed, and the boy continued to practice diligently. He experimented with new melodies, created small compositions, and refined the piece that had impressed the guests at the mansion. Each day he felt his confidence grow, but he also became more aware of the challenges that awaited him. He knew that talent alone would not be enough to change his life. He needed opportunity, exposure, and guidance. The memory of the mansion lingered in his mind, serving as both a reminder of what was possible and a motivation to reach higher. One afternoon, a small envelope arrived for the boy. It was from the mansion, a simple note inviting him to return and play again for the family and their friends. The boy's heart raced as he read the words. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, a chance to show that his performance was not a one-time miracle, but a reflection of his dedication and skill. He looked at his mother, who smiled and nodded, her eyes filled with encouragement. Together, they prepared for the visit, making sure he was ready not only with his music but also with the courage to face the expectations that came with the invitation. The day of the visit, the boy felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. He knew that many eyes would be on him, watching for any sign of weakness or mistake. He remembered the words of the millionaire's wife and the reactions of the guests from the previous gathering. But he also remembered the feeling of accomplishment, the sense of pride that had filled him when he played that first note. With each step toward the mansion, he reminded himself that he was not there to impress anyone for the sake of approval. He was there to share his music, to express who he was through every note. Upon arriving at the mansion, the boy was once again struck by the grandeur and elegance of the surroundings. The walls seemed to whisper stories of wealth and privilege, and the piano stood proudly in the center of the main room. The guests were gathered, some recognizing him from before, others curious to see the young boy who had captured attention with his talent. The millionaire's wife greeted him with a polite smile, her tone neutral but carrying a hint of curiosity. She had seen enough to know that the boy was extraordinary, but she also wanted to see if his skill was consistent and genuine. The boy approached the piano with calm determination. He adjusted the bench, placed his fingers on the keys, and took a deep breath. The first notes flowed effortlessly, familiar and comforting, and soon the room was filled with a melody that seemed to weave a story of hope, struggle, and quiet strength. The guests listened intently, some leaning forward, others closing their eyes to better absorb the music. The boy played with emotion and precision, allowing his feelings to guide each note, each chord. His music was no longer just a skill to be admired. It was a voice that spoke directly to the hearts of those listening. As the performance continued, the boy noticed subtle changes in the room. Faces that had been skeptical were now filled with admiration. The whispers of doubt were replaced with murmurs of appreciation. Even the millionaire's wife, known for her pride and sharpness, seemed genuinely impressed. She no longer saw him as a poor maid's son. She saw a young musician with talent, dedication, and an undeniable presence. The boy's music had transcended social boundaries, creating a moment where status, wealth, and background mattered less than the purity of his expression. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. The boy stepped back from the piano, a modest smile on his face, feeling a sense of fulfillment that went beyond praise or recognition. His mother, standing nearby, could hardly contain her joy and pride. She had watched her son transform from a quiet observer into a confident performer who commanded attention with grace and authenticity. The boy had not only impressed the guests, but had also proven to himself that his passion and hard work could open doors he had only dreamed of. In the days that followed, the boy continued to receive invitations to perform, opportunities that allowed him to grow and develop his talent further. Each performance built his confidence, strengthened his skills, and expanded his understanding of the world beyond his small home. Yet despite the growing recognition, he remained humble and grounded, never forgetting the small apartment where he had first discovered his love for music and the mother who had nurtured his talent with unwavering support. Through it all, the boy learned that true success was not measured by applause or recognition, but by the courage to pursue one's passion and the determination to overcome obstacles. He realized that talent alone was not enough. It required persistence, patience, and the willingness to seize opportunities when they arose. The experience of being invited back to the mansion, of performing for a new audience, had shown him the power of music to connect people, to inspire change, and to create moments of beauty that could transcend social barriers. The boy's journey was just beginning, and while challenges still lay ahead, he now carried with him a sense of purpose and confidence that could not be shaken. Music had become more than a hobby or a skill. It was a part of his identity, a way to express who he was and to reach out to the world. Each note he played was a reminder of where he had come from, of the lessons he had learned, and of the endless possibilities that awaited him if he continued to believe in himself and his talent. The sun was setting over the city, casting a warm glow across the tall buildings and busy streets. Inside a grand mansion on a quiet, tree-lined avenue, a small gathering was taking place. The house was filled with laughter, chatter, and the soft clinking of glasses. Guests dressed in elegant attire moved gracefully across the marble floors, admiring the expensive decorations and priceless art on the walls. Among the crowd, a young boy stood near the doorway, quietly observing everything. He was the son of the family's maid, a boy who had grown up in a world very different from this one. While the children of the guests had private tutors, played with the latest toys, and enjoyed every privilege life could offer, he had spent most of his days helping his mother, running errands or practicing on a small, worn-out keyboard at home. The boy's presence in the mansion that evening was not unusual, yet it often went unnoticed by the wealthy guests. He had learned to move quietly, to stay in the shadows, and to make himself small. But tonight was different. He had been invited to accompany his mother as she served refreshments and tidied the rooms. He had come along quietly, not expecting anything more than the usual glances from the guests, some curious, some indifferent, and some openly disdainful. As the boy watched from the corner, the millionaire's wife entered the room. She was a striking woman, always impeccably dressed, her hair perfectly styled, and her words often cutting and sharp. She enjoyed being the center of attention and had a reputation for her pride and arrogance. Tonight, as she looked around the room, she noticed the young boy standing near the doorway. Her eyes narrowed slightly and a smirk appeared on her face. She had always found amusement in mocking those she considered beneath her, and the boy's quiet demeanor made him an easy target. Walking over to the piano, a magnificent grand instrument that gleamed under the chandelier light, she addressed the boy with a teasing tone. "If you can play this piano," she said, her voice dripping with mockery, "I'll consider adopting you." The room fell silent for a moment, the other guests glancing at the exchange with curiosity and a hint of amusement. Some of them chuckled quietly, thinking this was just another display of the woman's arrogance. The boy, however, did not laugh or shrink away. He simply looked at her, his eyes calm but thoughtful, as if processing her words and weighing the challenge hidden within them. His mother, standing nearby, felt a wave of worry and embarrassment. She had known the boy to be talented with music, but she also knew the ridicule he often faced from people like the millionaire's wife. She wanted to step in, to protect him, to whisper that it was better to stay silent and unnoticed. But something in the boy's expression made her pause. There was a quiet strength there, a determination that she had seen in him before, but never so clearly as in that moment. The boy took a deep breath and moved toward the piano. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of expectation and scrutiny pressed down on him. The guests watched intently, some leaning forward, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. The air in the room seemed to thicken, filled with anticipation. He stood before the piano, his small hands hovering above the keys. The millionaire's wife leaned slightly, her smirk still present, confident that he would falter, that he would be exposed for the humble boy she thought he was. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The boy remembered the countless hours he had spent at home, practicing in the dim light of a small room, pressing the keys of a keyboard that was missing several notes. He remembered his mother sitting nearby, smiling softly, encouraging him to continue despite the limited resources they had. He remembered the quiet nights when he would play melodies that only he and his mother could hear, imagining a world beyond their small apartment, a world full of beauty and possibility. With that memory in mind, he pressed a single key. The sound rang clear and bright, resonating through the large room. The guests stirred, some surprised by the clarity of the note, others unsure what to make of it. The millionaire's wife raised an eyebrow, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. She had not expected even that one note to sound as it did. The boy's confidence grew slightly, but he did not let it show. He knew this was only the beginning, that the challenge ahead required focus and composure. He began to play a simple melody, one that he had composed in his room many times before. The notes flowed smoothly, filling the room with a sound that was both gentle and powerful. Guests stopped their conversations, their eyes fixed on the boy as if drawn by an invisible force. The music was different from the grand compositions often played in such settings. It was raw, honest, and full of emotion. It told a story of struggle, hope, and resilience without a single word spoken. The millionaire's wife watched closely, her smirk slowly fading. She had expected embarrassment, a moment of weakness that would make her laughter justified. Instead, she saw skill, dedication, and an unexpected depth in the boy's performance. The room was no longer filled with idle chatter. It was filled with a quiet reverence, the kind that comes when something truly remarkable is unfolding before one's eyes. As the melody continued, the boy's mind wandered briefly to his mother, who was standing quietly, her eyes glistening with pride and worry. He thought about the sacrifices she had made, the long hours of work and the constant struggle to provide for him. Every note he played was a tribute to her, a way of saying thank you without words. The guests, many of whom had never experienced such genuine emotion in music, felt a shift in the atmosphere. There was a sense of connection, a recognition that talent and heart could not be measured by wealth or status. The boy finished the first piece with a soft, lingering note. Silence enveloped the room for a heartbeat before the guests began to stir, exchanging looks of astonishment and admiration. Some whispered to each other, trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The millionaire's wife, usually so composed and in control, felt a rare sense of humility. She realized that her attempt to mock and belittle had instead revealed something extraordinary. For the boy, the moment was not about proving himself to the guests or to the millionaire's wife. It was about asserting his own worth, about showing that he had something valuable to offer the world, something that no amount of mockery or prejudice could diminish. He stepped back slightly from the piano, his heart racing but his expression calm. He had faced the challenge, and though the journey was just beginning, he had taken the first step toward something greater. The guests began to applaud, some hesitantly at first and then with growing enthusiasm. The boy's mother wiped a tear from her eye, unable to hold back her emotions any longer. She had always believed in her son's talent, but seeing it recognized even in this small way was a moment of profound pride and relief. The millionaire's wife, her expression unreadable, nodded slowly, a silent acknowledgement of the boy's skill. She could no longer dismiss him as a mere child or a poor servant's son. As the evening continued, the boy remained near the piano, quietly observing the reactions of those around him. He knew that this was only the beginning of a long journey, one filled with challenges, opportunities, and the constant need to prove himself. Yet for the first time, he felt a sense of possibility, a sense that the world might be bigger and more welcoming than he had ever imagined. In that grand room, surrounded by wealth and elegance, the young boy had found his voice, and with it, a spark of hope that would guide him through the days and years to come.